The sea stretched endlessly before her, blue melting into gray, the kind of horizon that made loneliness feel infinite. Nadia stirred her coffee at the small coastal café, her eyes tracing the seagulls diving in the wind. She'd been coming here for weeks now, pretending to read, pretending to heal. Her phone lay face down beside the cup, still silent, as it had been since Malik walked out 3 months ago. The world kept moving, her friends married, her colleagues posted vacations, her sister kept calling. But Nadia had stopped somewhere between heartbreak and disbelief. She didn't want to admit it, but she'd built her days around silence. That's when she noticed him. He was sitting 2 tables away, alone, reading an old paperback. Mid-30s, maybe. Tall, with a calm confidence that didn't demand attention but somehow caught it. When he looked up, their eyes met for a second, long enough for Nadia to glance away, pretending it hadn't happened. Minutes later, he was standing near her table. "Excuse me," he said with a smile that carried both warmth and precision. "You dropped this." He handed her a pen she hadn't realized had rolled off the table. "Oh, thank you." She smiled, embarrassed but intrigued. "I'm Damon," he offered easily. "You come here often?" She almost laughed. It sounded like a line from an old movie, but something in his tone wasn't pushy, just curious. They talked, first about books, then about travel, then about the ache of routine life. Damon spoke like someone who'd seen more of the world than most people dreamed of. His words were calm, deliberate, and each one seemed to land right where her insecurities lived. "You ever been on a cruise?" he asked suddenly. She shook her head. "No, I don't really travel. Not anymore." He leaned back, studying her. "You should. The ocean has a way of reminding you how small heartbreak really is." That line stayed with her. Maybe it was how he said it. Not as advice, but as truth. Before leaving, he mentioned casually, "I actually won a cruise last month, a full week, all paid. I was supposed to go with a friend, but plans changed." His eyes met hers again, steady, soft. "You should come. Just think about it." Nadia laughed at first. "You're inviting a stranger on a cruise?" He smiled. "Strangers are just people we haven't trusted yet." That night, Nadia replayed the conversation in her mind. She told herself it was ridiculous, impulsive, even dangerous. But between the soft hum of her apartment fan and the empty side of the bed, his words echoed louder than reason. By morning, she found herself checking cruise photos online. The ship looked unreal. Glass decks, shimmering pools, sunsets that melted into gold. She imagined herself standing on the rail, wind in her hair, free from the weight of everything. A message pinged on her phone. "Damon. Still thinking about the sea?" She hesitated before replying, fingers hovering over the screen. Finally, she typed back, "Maybe." His response came instantly. "Good. We sail next Friday." Her heart skipped. She didn't remember agreeing, and yet something inside her whispered, "Why not? What's left to lose?" By Thursday, her bag was half packed. Aisha called, suspicious. "You're going where? With who?" "Just a friend I met here," Nadia replied, trying to sound casual. "It's safe. It's just a cruise." Her sister's silence lingered. "Nadia, don't do anything stupid. You don't know him." But Nadia was already past the point of logic. She needed to believe that something unexpected, something good, could still happen to her. As the taxi pulled up to the harbor the next morning, the salt air filled her lungs. Damon was already there, waving, dressed in a linen shirt and sunglasses. Behind him, the ship gleamed live, like a floating palace. He smiled as she approached. "You made it." She smiled back, unsure if it was excitement or fear fluttering in her chest. "I guess I did." Together they walked toward the boarding ramp, the air alive with laughter, cameras clicking, and the promise of escape. But somewhere deep down, beneath the rhythm of the waves and the hum of engines, a quiet voice whispered a warning she couldn't yet understand. "This isn't just a vacation. This is the beginning of something you can't return from." The sound of laughter and waves filled the air as Nadia stepped onto the gleaming deck. The cruise ship looked even grander up close, white, glassy, endless. Crew members in crisp uniforms welcomed passengers with cocktails and bright smiles. For the first time in months, Nadia felt like she was stepping into another life, one untouched by heartbreak or memory. Damon guided her through the bustle, his hand gently at her back. "You like it?" he asked, watching her face instead of the sea. "It's unbelievable," she whispered. Everything sparkled. The marble floors, the chandeliers swaying lightly with the ship's movement, the ocean stretching out like a promise. He chuckled softly. "Told you. You needed this." They explored together. Dining halls the size of ballrooms, endless corridors of cabins, the rooftop pool where sunlight scattered like diamonds. Damon seemed to know exactly where to go, moving through the ship with ease, greeting staff with quick nods. By sunset, they stood on the top deck. The coastline was fading into gold behind them. Nadia leaned against the railing, wind tangling her hair. Damon snapped a photo of her with his phone. "Don't," she laughed, covering her face. "You'll want to remember this," he said. His voice was warm, but something in his eyes was unreadable, like a shadow that didn't match the light. That night, over dinner, he was the perfect companion. Funny, attentive, genuinely interested. He asked about her work at the clinic, about her parents, about her dreams before life got in the way. He listened with intensity that felt flattering, almost hypnotic. But every time she asked about him, his answers came wrapped in fog. "So, what exactly do you do?" she asked, sipping her wine. He smiled, deflecting. "A little of everything. Marketing, import. Nothing exciting." "Import?" she pressed, curious. "Yeah," he said quickly, setting his phone face down on the table. "Mostly logistics." The way he said it made her pause. But then he leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, and the unease melted away, at least for now. Later, while walking along the promenade, she noticed Damon stopping to greet two men near the bar. Both older, dressed casually but with an edge that didn't fit the vacation crowd. Their conversation was brief, hushed. She caught only fragments. Shipment. Confirmation. Tonight. When he returned, she asked lightly, "Friends of yours?" "Business contacts," he said too quickly. Then softer, "Don't worry about it. Just work stuff." Nadia nodded, pretending not to notice the way he slipped his phone from his pocket to check messages, angling the screen away from her. The next morning she woke early, sunlight spilling into the cabin. Damon was already dressed, sitting at the desk, typing something rapidly. When she stirred, he closed the laptop in one motion and smiled. "Morning, sleepyhead. I ordered breakfast. Hope you like omelets." He kissed her forehead before she could question him. For the next 2 days, the cruise unfolded like a dream. Endless food, music, laughter. Damon danced with her under the stars, told her she was different, special. Yet every once in a while, the mask slipped. When his phone buzzed and he stepped aside, when his eyes darted toward certain crew members, when his smile seemed rehearsed. On the third night, Nadia stood alone by the railing, the sea black beneath her, Beha. In her, laughter spilled from the bar, but her thoughts felt heavy. She remembered her sister's warning, "You don't know him." She turned, searching for Damon. He was by the lower deck stairs, speaking again with one of the same men from the bar. Their faces were serious, their words too quiet to hear. When he noticed her watching, he smiled and waved like nothing was wrong. Nadia forced a smile back, pretending, but a chill passed through her that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. For the first time, she wished she knew exactly where this ship was headed, and what Damon was really sailing toward. End of Chapter 2. Transitions seamlessly to Chapter 3. The Missing Call. By the fourth morning, the sun was sharp and brilliant over the water, but Nadia's thoughts felt foggy. She hadn't spoken to Aisha since boarding. Her sister had sent a few messages, the last one reading, "Just let me know you're okay, please." Standing on the balcony, Nadia finally decided to call. The signal bars flickered, then vanished completely. She frowned, walking inside the cabin. "Weird," she murmured. She tried again. Nothing. "No service," the screen read. Moments later, Damon emerged from the shower, towel around his neck. "Everything okay?" "My phone's dead. I was trying to call my sister. The signal just disappeared." He glanced briefly, too casually. "Probably roaming. Happens all the time in international waters." "Then why do people in the lounge still have Wi-Fi?" she asked, remembering the group she'd seen posting photos. He smiled faintly, taking her phone. "Let me see." He tapped the screen, then handed it back. "Just needs a reboot. Don't worry. We'll check again after lunch." "Barish?" But something in his tone, the soft certainty, made her chest tighten. The rest of the morning dragged. Damon insisted they join a poolside party, his energy too bright, almost performative. He laughed loudly, made friends with strangers, even pulled Nadia into the water. But when she stepped away to dry off, she saw him across the deck, speaking quietly with a crew member in uniform. Their heads leaned close. Damon's expression was serious, businesslike. Nothing like the charming man she'd been with all morning. When she walked over, he straightened instantly. "Hey, I was just asking about our dinner reservation," he said smoothly. The crewman nodded stiffly and left. "Dinner reservation?" she repeated. "Yeah, the captain's table event," he said, smiling again. "I wanted to surprise you." She nodded, pretending to believe him. But the knot in her stomach didn't fade. Later that evening, while Damon showered again before dinner, she tried her phone once more. Still nothing. Out of instinct, she picked up his, left unlocked on the bed, and checked the connection. Full bars. Her breath caught. Before she could scroll, the bathroom door opened. Damon stepped out, steam curling behind him. "Looking for something?" She forced a laugh, setting it down. "Just checking the time." He watched her a moment too long before smiling. "You don't trust easily, do you?" The question lingered between them. She didn't answer. That night, after dinner, the ship rocked gently under a pale moon. Damon excused himself to grab something from the bar. Nadia waited by the railing, restless. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Curiosity pulled her down the stairs toward the lower deck, quieter, darker, where the air smelled of fuel and salt. From around the corner, voices whispered. She peeked through the half-open door of a service corridor. Damon stood there, speaking with two men, the same ones she'd seen before. Their faces were tense, their words quick. "Tomorrow night," one said. "She's ready?" Damon's voice was low but steady. "She won't be a problem." Nadia froze, her pulse thundering in her ears. A clatter echoed down the hall, a dropped bucket somewhere. The men turned, alert. Nadia stepped back, holding her breath until they passed out of sight. She hurried back to the cabin, her hands trembling. When Damon returned later, He smiled like nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "Yeah, just tired." But as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the words replayed in her mind like a warning. She's ready. Ready for what? End of Chapter 3. Transitions seamlessly to Chapter 4. The room below deck. Sleep came in fragments that night. Every time Nadia closed her eyes, she heard those words again. She's ready. The phrase looped through her thoughts, twisting meaning into menace. By dawn, she'd convinced herself it was nothing. Maybe a business deal. Maybe she'd imagined the tone. Yet something deep inside whispered otherwise. Damon acted as if nothing was wrong. Over breakfast, he was cheerful, joking about the day's excursions. But his eyes darted toward his phone every few minutes, and when she asked if they could explore a nearby island during the next stop, he hesitated. "Let's wait," he said. "Too many tourists today." The answer was harmless on its surface, but the control beneath it was not. That evening, as the ship glided through black water, Nadia noticed Damon getting restless. He kept checking his watch, pacing near the window. "I have to take care of something," he finally said. "Just a short call. Stay here, okay?" She nodded, pretending to scroll through photos as he left. The moment the door clicked shut, she slipped on her shoes and followed. The hallway outside was quiet except for the low hum of engines. Damon walked fast, heading toward the lower decks, a part of the ship passengers rarely visited. Nadia trailed at a distance, heart pounding. The deeper she went, the colder the air became, the lights dimmer. Signs on the walls read, "Crew only" and "Maintenance access." He turned a corner and disappeared behind a metal door. She waited, listening. Then, slowly, she pushed it open just enough to see inside. The room smelled of oil and seawater. Machinery lined the walls, their rhythmic thrum masking voices. Damon stood beside a tall man with a shaved head and heavy accent. They spoke in low tones. Nadia edged closer, crouching behind a stack of crates. "Payment confirmed," the other man said. Damon's voice was calm, cold. "It'll be done by tomorrow night. She trusts me." The man chuckled, a sound that made Nadia's skin crawl. "She's perfect. No one will look for her." Nadia's breath caught. The words sliced through her like ice. She's perfect. No one will look for her. For a moment, everything blurred, the hum of machines, the echo of boots, her own heartbeat roaring in her ears. She pressed a hand to her mouth, afraid even her breathing would betray her. The men moved toward a table, unrolling what looked like passenger forms and ID copies. Nadia saw her name printed clearly at the top of one, Nadia Rahim, Cabin 47B. Her blood ran cold. Damon leaned closer to the other man. "We move her at the next port," he said. "No scenes. She thinks we're staying on board." The other man nodded. "You always bring good ones, Damon." She stumbled back, the metal floor creaking softly. Damon's head snapped up. "What was that?" Nadia froze. He stepped toward the crates, scanning the shadows. "Marco, check that side." She slipped behind a narrow pillar, pressing herself flat, praying the darkness would hide her. Boots scraped close, then stopped. A radio crackled somewhere, and Damon sighed. "Probably just one of the workers," he muttered. The men turned back to their conversation. When they finally left, Nadia remained still, too afraid to move. Minutes passed before she dared to breathe again. Then, trembling, she slipped out through the same door, her pulse hammering. Back in her cabin, she locked the door and sank to the floor. The truth hit her all at once, the fake charm, the secrecy, the guarded phone. None of it was coincidence. Damn, On hadn't brought her here to heal. He'd brought her here to disappear. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, pale, wide-eyed, shaking. She whispered to herself, "You have to get off this ship." Outside, the engines roared louder, propelling them further into the dark sea. Tomorrow, she now knew, was not another day of paradise. It was a deadline. End of Chapter 4. Transitions seamlessly to Chapter 5. The trap closes. Nadia barely slept. Every creak of the ship made her flinch. Every echo in the corridor felt like footsteps coming for her. When dawn bled through the curtains, she was already sitting upright, still dressed, staring at the door. The moment Damon knocked, she forced herself to breathe normally. He entered, smiling, holding 2 coffees. "Morning," he said softly. "You disappeared last night. I was looking everywhere for you." Her throat went dry. "I just wasn't feeling well. The motion got to me." He studied her face for a moment, longer than felt safe. Then he smiled again, setting a cup beside her. "You should have called me. I'd have taken care of you." Nadia nodded, avoiding his eyes. Every part of her wanted to scream, to accuse him, but fear chained her voice. She needed to be careful, calm, strategic. Over breakfast, he was unusually attentive. Too attentive. Every move she made, his gaze followed. When she reached for her purse, he stopped her gently. "Don't worry about money," he said. "I've got you covered." Later, as she started to get dressed for lunch, he appeared behind her. "You don't need to go out today," he said casually, though his tone was firm. "Just rest. The sun's brutal and you haven't been yourself." Her heart pounded. "I'm fine, really." He tilted his head, still smiling, but his eyes were hard. "Please, stay in the room. For safety." The word safety made her stomach twist. "Why?" she asked carefully. "There have been some incidents," he replied. "A passenger had their things stolen. I don't want you wandering alone." His voice was low, reassuring, but rehearsed. The charm was still there, but now it felt like a wall instead of a comfort. "Okay," she whispered, forcing a smile. "I'll stay." He nodded approvingly, then opened the small safe under the desk. "Let me keep your passport here," he said. "Safer that way." Her pulse quickened. "I can hold on to it." "Nadia," he said gently, stepping closer. "Trust me." That word, trust, stung like glass. Still, she handed it over, watching as he locked the safe and pocketed the key. The metallic click echoed in her mind. After he left, the silence was suffocating. She pressed her ear to the door until his footsteps faded, then let out a shaky breath. Her reflection in the mirror looked hollow, haunted. "How did I let this happen?" she thought. "How did I believe him?" Her mind replayed the first time she'd met him. The easy smile, the comforting words, the illusion of safety. She'd wanted to believe in kindness again. After Malik, after everything, she'd been desperate to feel seen. Damon had sensed that instantly. He'd studied her loneliness and turned it into a weapon. Tears burned her eyes, but she wiped them away. Crying wouldn't save her. Thinking might. She opened her suitcase quietly, searching for anything useful. A charger cable, a pen, anything sharp. The idea of escape formed slowly, fragile as glass. Find a way to reach the staff, maybe slip a note to someone she could trust. But even that felt risky. If Damon truly had the crew involved, one wrong move could end everything. When he returned in the evening, he was holding dinner trays. "Room service tonight," he said brightly. "I told you, safer here." She smiled faintly. "You think of everything." He sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his breath. "That's because I care," he said softly. Then, as if testing her, he added, "You still trust me, right?" Nadia met his gaze. Her heart hammered, but her face stayed calm. "Of course." He studied her for a moment, then relaxed, satisfied. Later, when he finally fell asleep beside her, she lay awake, eyes open in the dark. The sound of his breathing was steady, peaceful, like someone who felt completely in control. Slowly, Nadia slid her hand under the pillow where she'd hidden the small metal key she'd found earlier wedged behind the dresser. It wasn't the safe key, but it was a start. She stared into the darkness, her mind whispering the words like a vow. He thinks I'm trapped. But he's wrong. Outside, the ship groaned softly against the waves, carrying her closer to whatever came next. Morning light slipped through the curtains, but Nadia never saw it. Somewhere below deck, in a world that smelled of metal, oil, and salt, she stirred, half-conscious, her body heavy as stone. Her mind drifted between fragments of memory, the dinner tray, Damon's smile, the faint bitterness of the juice he'd handed her. Then, nothing. Now every sound felt distant, distorted. The dull hum of the ship's engine vibrated through her bones. She tried to lift her head, but her limbs refused to move. Panic bloomed slow and disoriented, like drowning in her own body. Above her, something dripped, water maybe, hitting metal in steady rhythm. She blinked, forcing her eyes open. The space was dim, narrow, the air stifling. A single bulb flickered overhead. Her wrists were bound loosely, but enough to bruise. "Where am I?" She tried to speak, but her throat burned. The only thing that answered her was the echo of the ship groaning above. And then, a voice. Damon's, faint, muffled through the door. Calm, cold. "It's done," he was saying. "She's sedated. Keep her here until the transfer." A second voice, the same one she'd heard before in the maintenance room, replied, "You sure she's not trouble?" "She trusts me," Damon said. "Or she did." A pause, then softer. "It's just business." The words sliced through the haze. Nadia's pulse surged. She forced herself to stay still, to breathe quietly. She could, and let them know she was awake. Up above, the world went on as if nothing had changed. Passengers chatted over breakfast, cameras flashed, music played on the pool deck. Someone asked a crew member where the woman with the dark curls had gone. Damon answered before anyone else could. "She wasn't feeling well," he said smoothly, his expression perfectly calm. "Seasick. She asked to rest in her cabin. I'll check on her later." He laughed, even offered to bring her soup from the buffet, and the others nodded politely, unconcerned. To them, he was the picture of a caring partner. To Nadia, trapped below, he was her captor. Hours blurred. She drifted in and out of consciousness, the sedative still thick in her veins. Each time she woke, the same words echoed. "It's just business." In those moments between sleep and waking, she saw flashes of her life, her sister's face, her mother's kitchen, Malik's betrayal. It all collided with Damon's voice, weaving nightmare into memory until she could no longer tell which was real. When she finally gathered enough strength, she tried to move again. The ropes cut into her wrists, but she twisted gently, testing them. They were tight, but sloppily tied. Maybe they hadn't expected her to wake this soon. Her eyes darted to the far corner. A metal box stacked on crates, a small vent near the ceiling letting in faint light. Beyond it, she could hear footsteps, laughter, the clang of tools. Crew voices. If she screamed, would anyone hear her? Or worse, would the wrong people hear first? She swallowed hard, forcing herself to think. She had to wait. Watch. Conserve energy. The right moment would come. Suddenly, the lock turned. She froze. Damon stepped inside, holding a flashlight. His face was calm, almost tender. "You're awake," he said softly. "Good." Nadia didn't respond. She stared at him, eyes wide, heart pounding. He crouched best, eyed her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I told you not to worry," he whispered. "You just need to rest until we reach port." "Why are you doing this?" The words scraped out like gravel. He sighed. "Don't make it harder than it has to be, Nadia. You're smart. You know how the world works. People pay for what they want. And right now, you're valuable." Tears blurred her vision. "You said you cared about me." For a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes, regret or the ghost of it. Then it was gone. Caring doesn't pay bills. He stood, turning toward the door. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day." The door slammed shut. Nadia lay there, shaking, the echoes of his footsteps fading into the drone of the ship. Her mind screamed, but her lips barely moved. Tomorrow. The word became a weapon, a promise, and a deadline. The morning Nadia vanished, Aisha woke with an uneasy feeling that clung to her chest like humidity before a storm. It wasn't unusual for Nadia to go a day without texting. She could be flighty, lost in her emotions, but this silence felt different. There were no read receipts, no emojis, not even the random photos she always sent when she traveled. Just nothing. By noon, Aisha's worry had curdled into dread. She stared at her phone screen, rereading their last exchange. "The ocean looks endless," Nadia had written 2 nights ago. "Maybe this trip will help me forget everything." Aisha had replied, "Stay close to people. Don't disappear like you do when you're sad." Now the irony stung. She dialed Nadia's number again, straight to voicemail. She tried WhatsApp. No connection. Instagram. Last active 2 days ago. The unease grew heavier. Aisha worked as a nurse, calm under pressure, trained to read signs, and every sign told her something was wrong. By afternoon, she called the cruise company. After being passed between departments, a chipper representative finally said, "Miss Khan?" "Yes, Nadia is on our passenger list. According to our records, she's still on board." "Then why can't I reach her?" "Oh, the ship's network can be spotty. Many guests turn off roaming to avoid charges." Aisha clenched her jaw. "Can you confirm she's safe?" The woman hesitated. "I'm afraid we can't give personal details about our guests, but if there were an emergency, we'd be notified." It was the kind of polite, empty reassurance Aisha gave patients' families when she didn't have answers. That night, she tried again. Emails, messages, even a video call that rang into the void. Still nothing. Finally, she searched for the man Nadia had mentioned. Damon. No last name, just Damon. The stranger from the café who'd won a cruise. Aisha opened her laptop and started digging. She scrolled through social media, dating sites, even travel forums. There were plenty of Damons, none who matched the vague details Nadia had shared. Then she remembered the photo Nadia had sent. Damon standing beside a docked ship, his arm draped casually around her shoulders, sunlight glinting off his watch. Aisha zoomed in. His face was clear enough for facial recognition tools, something she'd learned to use after a friend's catfishing incident years ago. She uploaded it to a search database. The results came slowly, then exploded into a list of matches. Her heart dropped. Different names, different cities, same face. Evan K., seen in Morocco. Daniel Meyer, tagged in Greece. Damien R., photographed with another woman aboard a cruise last year. Each account was linked to women, all smiling, all now inactive. Aisha's pulse thundered in her ears. She clicked deeper, following threads through obscure travel blogs and public posts. In one, a woman commented, "If anyone else has met this man, contact me. My sister never came home." Her hands shook as she took screenshots. The pattern was too clear to dismiss. Nadia hadn't just vanished. She'd been targeted. She called the authorities next, reporting a missing person. The officer on the other end sounded weary. Ma'am, the ship is international waters. It's complicated jurisdictionally. So you're telling me no one's going to help her? I'm saying we'll reach out to the cruise line, but these things take time. Time? Aisha's voice cracked. She might not have any. The silence on the line was her answer. When she hung up, it was nearly midnight. The apartment was dark except for the laptop's glow. Photos of Damon's many faces filled her screen, each one smiling, confident, predatory. Aisha opened a new folder titled Nadia. Inside it, she began saving every clue, every post, every alias. She mapped connections, dates, and ports of departure. Her nursing instincts, the same that once helped her catch subtle symptoms before they turned fatal, now guided her investigation. All right, Damon, she whispered, her voice steadying. You think she's alone? You're wrong. She opened a new browser tab and typed, Private Investigator Missing Persons International. As search results filled the screen, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, staring at it, then answered. A low male voice crackled through. You're looking for your sister. Her blood ran cold. Who is this? You don't know me, the voice said. But I was on that ship once, and I know what happens to people who don't get off in time. The line went dead. Aisha sat frozen, heart hammering. Then she opened her notes app and began typing everything the stranger said before she could forget a word. She didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Because deep down, she already knew. Nadia was in danger, and Aisha would burn the world down to find her. When Nadia woke, the air was different. Thick, humid, sour with the scent of oil and rust. Her head throbbed as if someone had driven a nail behind her eyes. For a few seconds, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she felt the hard floor beneath her, the ache in her wrists, and the faint hum of distant machinery. She wasn't on the ship anymore. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy, sluggish, drugged. The last thing she remembered was Damon handing her a glass of wine, his voice soft, reassuring. You need to relax, he'd said. Then everything went dark. Now, dim light flickered through gaps in corrugated metal walls. The space around her stretched like a forgotten warehouse. Crates stacked against the far wall, a single rusted fan spinning lazily overhead, and she wasn't alone. 5 women sat in a row along the wall, motionless, their faces pale and hollow. One was young, barely out of her teens. Another looked older, her expression vacant, eyes unfocused. They were all wearing plain clothes, different styles, but the same emptiness behind their gazes. A thick padlock hung on the metal door. Beside it stood a guard, tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform unmarked. He barked something in a language Nadia didn't understand. No one answered. When he left, silence returned, heavy as smoke. Nadia pushed herself upright. Where am I? Her voice cracked. What is this place? The women didn't answer at first. Finally, one with dark curls and trembling hands turned her head. Her accent was soft, Eastern European, maybe. You were sold, she whispered. The words hit Nadia like a slap. What? The woman looked away. You were brought here like all of us. Promises, gifts, men who smiled too much. Nadia shook her head violently. No, that's not possible. Damon. The name caught in her throat. She reached for her neck. Her pendant was gone. She looked around. So was her purse, her phone, her passport. Her entire life had been stripped away while she slept. The woman's eyes softened with pity. They take everything. You belong to them now. Belong, The word made Nadia's stomach twist. Her mind raced, grasping for logic. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Damon was coming back. Maybe this was some misunderstanding. A detour, a problem with the cruise line. She clung to the thought like a drowning person grabbing driftwood. But deep down, she already knew the truth. He wasn't coming back. The woman's whisper continued. They sell us. Different countries. Some never come back. Nadia's pulse thundered. There has to be a way out, she said, scanning the walls for cracks, vents, anything. But all she saw were shadows and despair. Hours passed in a blur of fear. At some point, footsteps echoed outside. The metal door screeched open and blinding sunlight poured in. Men entered, shouting orders. They called out names from a clipboard, some real, others invented. Each time a name was called, a woman stood, trembling, and was led away. When the guard barked, 47B! Nadia flinched. That was her cabin number. He grabbed her arm roughly. She tried to pull back. Let me go! She screamed, her voice breaking. The guard laughed and shoved her forward. Quiet! Another woman cried out, Don't fight! It makes them angry! But Nadia fought anyway. She clawed at the man's arm, kicked, screamed until her throat burned. A slap cracked across her cheek, stars exploding behind her eyes. When she opened them again, she was outside. Bright sunlight blinding her. Trucks rumbled nearby, engines coughing black smoke. She saw rows of containers, some open, some sealed, and men moving like ants between them. She realized then, this wasn't a random warehouse. It was a port. Her mind reeled. Somewhere beyond those metal walls, the sea waited. The same ocean she'd once admired from the cruise deck, now an accomplice to her captivity. The guard pushed her toward another group of women, murmuring in broken English to a man holding a clipboard. She heard her name again. Mispronounced, stripped of meaning. He nodded, counting cash into the guard's palm. It took Nadia a moment to understand what had just happened. She had been bought. The guard turned away without a glance. The man grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a truck. As the door Ahmed shut, she caught one last glimpse of the horizon. Endless, unreachable blue. Inside the truck, the air was hot and suffocating. The women around her sat in silence, resigned. Nadia pressed her forehead against the metal wall, tears sliding down her cheek. Her thoughts spiraled to Damon, his smile, his promises, the false warmth that had led her here. For the first time, she felt the full weight of betrayal not just from him, but from herself. She whispered into the darkness, If I ever get out, I'll make him pay. The truck lurched forward, disappearing into the maze of docks, carrying her further from the woman she had been, and closer to the nightmare she could no longer escape. Rain came that night, a hard, unrelenting downpour that drowned out the sounds of engines and footsteps. For the first time since she'd been dragged into the compound, the guards retreated under cover, leaving only 2 men at the gates. The air smelled of salt and rust. Nadia huddled in the corner of her cell, her thin blanket soaked through, her mind caught between panic and exhaustion. That's when she heard the whisper, Psst, you're new. Nadia turned. A woman crouched near the back wall, her dark curls plastered to her face, eyes alert even in the dim light. She looked older than Nadia, but not by much. Her name, she later learned, was Lila, a Kenyan woman who had been here for months. You shouldn't talk, Nadia murmured. Lila's lips curved in a bitter half-smile. They're drunk tonight. Rain makes them lazy. She leaned closer. You want to get out, don't you? Nadia's heart jumped. There's no way out. There's always a way out. Lila's eyes flicked toward the far corner, where a rusted drain pipe disappeared into the floor. That leads to the old storm channel. I've been watching it for weeks. It's narrow, but two of us might fit if we move fast. Nadia hesitated. They'll kill us if we're caught. They'll sell us if we stay. The truth of it hit like a slap. That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, the two women waited for the final patrol to pass. When the compound's lights dimmed and the last guard's footsteps faded, Lila moved first, prying open the metal grate with a piece of bent wire. Nadia followed, her hands trembling. The smell inside was unbearable. Damp, mold, sewage, but freedom had no scent, only the faint pulse of hope. Crawl, Lila whispered. The tunnel was barely wide enough for their shoulders. Cold water pooled at their knees. They moved slowly, every breath echoing against the slick walls. Behind them, the distant hum of generators vibrated through the metal. Ahead, a faint glow. That's the outlet, Lila murmured. It opens near the dock. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then Nadia saw it, a sliver of light cutting through the darkness. Her chest clenched with fragile hope. They could almost taste the air outside, the storm beating against the world they'd been stolen from. But fate was cruel. A clang echoed behind them, the sound of the metal grate slamming shut. Voices shouted in a language they couldn't understand. Flashlights stabbed into the tunnel. Run! Lila hissed, pushing Nadia forward. They scrambled through the water, slipping, scraping their knees raw. The outlet was only a few meters away when a hand seized Nadia's ankle, yanking her backward. She screamed, kicking wildly, but the grip tightened. Lila turned, striking the guard's arm with the metal rod she'd used earlier. He roared in pain, then hit her across the face with a baton. Lila! Nadia cried, reaching out. The second guard grabbed Nadia by the hair, dragging her out of the tunnel and into the rain. She fought, kicking and thrashing, but another blow to her ribs stole her breath. Lila lay motionless on the ground, her blood mixing with rainwater. Please, she's hurt, Nadia sobbed. The men laughed. One spat near her feet. No escape, he muttered in broken English. They hauled Nadia back inside, her body shawled. King, her wet clothes clinging like chains. The other captives stared silently as she was thrown to the floor. The overseer, a man with cold eyes and a leather belt looped around his wrist, stood waiting. You think you're clever? He said. She didn't answer. The first hit came fast, sharp, across her back. Pain exploded through her body. She bit her lip to stop from screaming, but the second strike broke her resolve. The third left her sobbing. When it was over, she lay in the dirt, trembling, her mind unraveling. Somewhere nearby, thunder rumbled again, and she wondered if Lila was still breathing. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time lost meaning. Nadia's thoughts became fragments. Flashes of Damon's smile, the ship's glittering deck, her sister's laughter. All of it seemed like a dream someone else had lived. She touched her bruised face and felt nothing. Inside her, something cracked, the part of her that believed the world was still capable of mercy. She sat there in the dark, whispering Lila's name, not sure if it was a prayer or a goodbye. When the door opened again, a man entered. Not a guard this time, but someone dressed in civilian clothes. He looked at her the way people look at merchandise. He said something to the overseer, who nodded. Then, with a satisfied smile, the man said in English, "Pack her. She leaves tomorrow." Nadia didn't react, didn't cry, didn't even breathe. She had tried to escape and failed. But somewhere, deep inside the wreckage of her mind, a spark still flickered. Because if she was leaving, it meant she'd see the outside world again. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to fight back. The call came just after dawn. A voice with a British accent, calm but wary. "This is Theo Mercer. You left me a message about a man named Damon." Aisha sat upright on her couch, surrounded by open laptops and empty coffee cups. Her eyes were blow, odd shot, her phone charger barely holding on. "Yes," she said quickly. "He took my sister. I think she's been trafficked." There was a pause on the line, then the faint clicking of a keyboard. "Send me everything you have." Minutes later, Aisha emailed him the folder she'd titled Nadia. Photos, screenshots, voice notes, her entire obsession compressed into megabytes. While the file transferred, her hands trembled. She hadn't slept properly in 3 days. Every moment of silence felt like betrayal. Theo called back an hour later. "You were right to contact me," he said grimly. "This man, Damon, isn't one person. He's a rotating alias used by several traffickers. I've seen this pattern before. Cruises, false identities, victims disappearing in transit." Aisha's stomach turned. "So it's real." "It's very real," Theo said, "and very organized." They began working together remotely, her in Karachi, him in London. By night, Aisha sifted through Nadia's digital traces, old messages, payment receipts, even location tags. By day, Theo ran deep searches on encrypted networks, tracing account numbers and metadata. Piece by piece, they built a map of something monstrous, a pipeline hidden behind the glamour of luxury travel. Theo's updates came in fragments. They use fake prize contests to lure victims. Another day. Money's laundered through shell tour companies in Cyprus. Then, Interpol's seen chatter about a recent shipment leaving from the Mediterranean. It could be connected. Each discovery was another blade of guilt. Aisha stared at her sister's smiling photo on the wall, Nadia in her floral dress, wind in her hair, and felt the weight of every missed call, every unspoken warning. "This is my fault," she murmured one night. Theo's voice crackled through the headset. "No, this is on them. But if we move fast, we can stop the next one. And maybe find her." The hope in his tone was fragile, but it was enough to keep her going. She worked through exhaustion, eyes burning from blue light, heart clenching each time she saw the word missing. Her apartment turned into a war room. Papers on the walls, string-connecting photos, lists of cruise departure dates. Finally, after 6 relentless days, Theo messaged, "Found something." They got on a video call immediately. Theo shared his screen, a digital map glowing with dots. "These are transaction points linked to Damon's aliases," he explained. "And this," he zoomed in on a highlighted route, "is a private dock in North Africa. It matches reports from a recent disappearance." Aisha leaned forward, barely breathing. "Could Nadia be there?" "It's possible. Interpol's been watching this region. If we send them our data, they can act." For a moment, hope cracked through the fog of despair. She exhaled shakily, whispering, "Okay, do it. Send everything." Theo nodded. "Already on it." As they hung up, Aisha stared at the glowing screen, at the lines and coordinates that might lead her back to her sister. Her eyes stung, her hands shook. For the first time, exhaustion gave way to purpose. She opened her journal and wrote one line. "If she's alive, I'll find her." Then she closed her laptop and whispered into the still air, "Hold on, Nadia. I'm coming." Outside, thunder rolled. The same storm that now shadowed the port where Nadia was being moved again. Night fell heavy over the compound, thick with the smell of diesel and fear. Nadia lay curled in the corner of a locked room, wrists bound, body bruised, mind drifting in and out of haze. The guards' voices had quieted hours ago, replaced by the low drone of engines and rain hammering the metal roof. Somewhere beyond those walls, the world still turned. She just wasn't sure if it remembered her. Then came the sound. At first it was faint, like distant thunder. But it grew louder, sharper. The distinct crack of tires against gravel, shouted commands in languages she didn't know, and then gunfire. Nadia jolted upright, her pulse thundering. Flashlights slashed through the cracks of the door. Men shouted outside, panicked, scrambling. The air was chaos. She pressed herself against the wall, unsure whether to pray or hide. The door burst open. A guard stumbled in, blood on his shoulder, screaming for someone to move the cargo. He didn't see Nadia crouched behind a crate. When he turned, another man appeared in the doorway, dressed in black tactical gear, a rifle raised. "Down! Police!" The guard barely lifted his weapon before a shot rang out. He collapsed. Nadia covered her ears, shaking. The officer swept the room with his light, landing on her. "You! Stay still!" he ordered. She nodded weakly, unable to speak. "Clear!" he shouted over his shoulder. Two others entered, one kneeling beside her. His voice softened. "You're safe now. Do you understand? You're safe." Safe. The word didn't feel real. Hands lifted her gently, guiding her through corridors that no longer echoed with cruelty, but with the storm of rescue. Shouts, running feet, the metallic clang of cell doors breaking open. Around her, other women stumbled into the light, blinking, sobbing, clinging to one another. Outside, rain poured in sheets, flashing red and blue from police vehicles. Sirens wailed. For a moment, Nadia just stood there, soaked, shaking, barely able to breathe. And then she saw him. Damon. He was being dragged across the mud by two officers, his expensive jacket torn, his wrists cuffed behind his back. His head hung low, hair plastered to his forehead. For a fleeting second, he lifted his gaze, and their eyes met. There was no shock, no shame, not even fear. Just emptiness. The same face that once promised safety now looked hollow, unrecognizable. Nadia's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to ask why, to demand what she had done to deserve any of it. But no sound came. She watched silently as they shoved him into a waiting vehicle, his silhouette swallowed by flashing lights. A paramedic placed a blanket around her shoulder, ours guiding her toward the ambulance. "You're lucky," he said softly. The timing was perfect. Someone tipped them off. Her breath caught. "Who?" He shrugged. "Interpol, I think. They said a woman sent them data. Detailed stuff. Your name was on the list." Aisha. The name echoed in Nadia's mind like a prayer. For the first time in months, she felt the faintest spark of warmth beneath the cold. She sank into the back of the ambulance, trembling as the doors closed. The sirens blared again, fading into the storm as the compound disappeared behind her. Through the window, she saw the faint outline of the sea, the same water that once carried her into hell, now glistening under flashes of lightning. Tears blurred her vision, but this time, they weren't just of fear. They were of survival. As the vehicle sped away, Nadia closed her eyes, whispering into the darkness, "I'm still here." Outside, the storm broke open, cleansing, relentless, and loud enough to drown the ghosts of the past. The courtroom was colder than Nadia expected, not in temperature but in silence, that heavy, waiting kind of quiet that swallowed every breath. She sat at the witness stand, hands folded tightly, the faint hum of fluorescent lights above her. Months had passed since the raid, yet her palms still trembled the same way they had the night she crawled out of that compound. Across the room sat Damon, dressed in a dark suit that no longer fit the man he once pretended to be, the charming, confident rescuer of her loneliness. His eyes flickered once toward her, then away, detached, as if she were a stranger. The sight hollowed her out. "Nadia," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the court what happened after you boarded the cruise ship with the defendant?" Her throat tightened. The air seemed too thick to breathe, but she nodded. "At first, it felt like a dream," she began. Her voice voice was barely a whisper. He made me believe I was safe, loved. He said he wanted to show me the world. She swallowed, forcing the next words out. But he wasn't showing me the world. He was selling me into it. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Damon didn't flinch. Nadia went on, step by step, recounting the manipulation, the subtle control, the isolation, the night she lost signal on her phone while everyone else's worked fine. She described the whispers below deck, the moment she realized she was being watched, not loved. The prosecutor guided her through it all, but the words poured out like floodwater now, unstoppable. "How did you escape?" someone asked. "I didn't," Nadia said softly. "They found me. My sister found me." Her gaze shifted to the gallery where Aisha sat, strong, sleepless, her eyes glistening. They hadn't spoken much about that night, not really. But they didn't need to. Survival had built a quiet language between them, one of small nods, trembling hands, and shared breath in the dark. When her testimony ended, the judge called for recess. Nadia stepped down from the stand, her legs shaky but steady enough to hold her. She passed Damon as guards led him out. For a brief moment he turned his head. "You ruined my life," he muttered under his breath. Nadia stopped. A faint, almost sad smile touched her lips. "No," she said softly. "You ruined your own." She didn't look back again. Outside the courthouse, flashes from reporters' cameras painted the air white. Voices shouted questions, names, headlines. Nadia didn't answer. She walked down the marble steps, feeling each one as if anchoring herself back to earth. Later, in the shelter where she now lived with other survivors, Nadia sat by the window, the city lights stretching endlessly below. Her reflection in the glass looked older, not in years, but in knowing. People called her brave. She didn't feel it. Strength wasn't what had saved her. Sheer will was. The same instinct that had whispered, "Stay alive," even when it hurts to breathe. Sometimes at night she still woke to phantom sounds, the creak of waves, the clang of metal doors. But then she'd breathe and remind herself, "You're home. You made it back." Healing, she realized, wasn't a straight line. It was a wound that scabbed and broke open again. But each time it hurt a little less. She picked up her journal, a habit Aisha had encouraged, and wrote the words she couldn't yet speak aloud. "He sold my body, but he never owned my soul." The pen shook as she finished the sentence, but her heart didn't. Outside, dawn crept slowly over the horizon, painting the sky in soft gold. For the first time, Nadia didn't flinch at the light. Tomorrow, she would start her therapy program, maybe even volunteer to help others like her. Because survival, she thought, wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.